Look, I know sometimes, especially lately, given everything going on in the news around the world, in the British royal family, there can be a tendency to focus on the negative. So today, I want to share with you a piece of news that is so gloriously wonderful, that is all about justice, which shows that in the end, the liars lose. That in the end, people who align themselves to the liars will lose. And it is the fact that that weird little bloke who has operated as Meghan Markle's mouthpiece for the past 6 years is done, finished, finito. He has just been Markled. Because the release of his new book, which the mainstream media, because they love him, because of course they hate the British royal family, trumpeted and promoted and pushed, has not just tanked, but has actually had a worse result than With Love Meghan on Netflix. And that, folks, is justice. That shows that the public have now spoken. And I celebrate this piece of good news today. Yes, there it is. The Express reporting Omid Scobie's new book could have seen better days as ranking figures are revealed, and the Royal News Network points out, turns out a turn towards fiction for Omid Scobie was a bit of a flop. I mean, that's a massive understatement. I'll get to the numbers. Whether the TV project moves forward, I would imagine, is definitely in question. And Meghan's well, they just had one word to sum up what has gone down: Markled. Now, of course, that little rat, Scobie, has crawled out of his hole to try and promote his book and has suggested, of course, that his fake reporting about the British royal family is somehow all correct. Look at this. For years, criticism of the royal institution has too often been framed by large parts of the media as disloyalty rather than journalism. This has created a culture where asking tough questions or exposing problematic behaviour invites personal attack instead of engagement. The Andrew situation shows why scrutiny, even of those in public favour, matters. It is not anti-monarchy, it's pro-transparency. When institutions close ranks and media deference replaces investigation, the truth gets delayed with potentially catastrophic consequences. Deference to power is not journalism, scrutiny of power is. And then he posted the cover of his last flop book and wrote overreaction, they said, about Endgame, pitchforks in hand. Time has a way of clarifying. No, Scobie, let me clarify this for you. You haven't broken a real story in your life about the British royal family. You signed up for a deal with the devil where everything that she repeated to you, every lie that she told you, was just tapped away as if it were fact. And actually, people like me have been spending years exposing the truth, but doing so in a respectful manner. But actually, without journalists like me, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor would never have been caught. There would be no Epstein files. I was the one that revealed Megxit too, and so much of the bad behaviour by Prince Harry and Meghan Markle that shamed their own roles. So all of a sudden, for you to try and claim the high ground here is a joke. And we have spoken. Because, look, I don't think this guy is a big deal. I know loads of you will be saying, why are you even leading on him? And I'll just explain why. Because for a long time, he was really a central figure to the destabilisation effort within the British royal family. He was the one who was spreading the worst lies. He was the one who tried to put out there that King Charles, our current king, and our future queen, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, were actually secretly racist. Like, that has constitutional implications. I would lock this guy up in the Tower of London if I could. I'd have him publicly flogged. But actually, the best thing is to see his career not just tank, but collapse. Because the numbers I'm about to share with you, as I say, this is not a minor flop. This is not something that's on the fence. This is the world rejecting this man, despite huge PR throughout the mainstream media, even the Daily Telegraph. Shame on them. Look at this. Let's just get into the figures because, oh my God, they are so good. They are just so good. It hit the shelves last month in the UK. This is talking about his book and centres on an American woman who quits her job at the White House for one at Buckingham Palace. The book was slammed by critics, with one review in The Telegraph calling it so poorly written that artificial intelligence would disown it. Yes, actually, sorry, I've just unfairly attacked The Telegraph. It was The Times, sorry, that gave him all of that positive coverage. The Telegraph's review actually was totally scathing. Here are the numbers, though. This is the moment you've been waiting for. Enjoy. UK. The book's hardcover version ranked 44,000th and 59th in books, 8,667 in contemporary romance, 3,486 in romantic comedy, and 2,330th in billionaires and millionaires romance. The paperback version showed no ratings, while the Kindle one ranked 34,969th in the Kindle store, 6,965th in teen and young adult, 2,663rd in contemporary romance fiction, and 1,111th in teen and young adults ebooks. What about this argument? Well, actually, Scobie's moved to America. He is now someone who actually aims at that market. You know, he doesn't like the Brits. He's like Meghan. It's like, I'm going to leave and I'm going to become an American with all of my Michael Jackson-style cosmetic surgery. So maybe it's done better in America. Let's see. In the US, the new book ranked even lower. Oops! With the hardcover version ranking, oh God, 63,663rd in books, 10,106 in contemporary romance, 2,161st in women's domestic life fiction, and 749th in romantic comedy. The paperback version ranked 600,045 and 402nd in books overall, while the Kindle version came 15,144th. Royal fans noticed the not-so-favourable rankings and took to social media to express their views. One user wrote on Reddit, "This is not a good thing for Omid, right? I mean, it didn't even make the top 5,000 list of all paid books for Kindle, nor did it make the top 50,000 for hardcover, nor the top 500,000 for paperback." Yeah, that's not good. I'll confirm that. Could this quash Omid's dream of making the book into a TV series? So if this book doesn't fly off the shelf and resonate, could it be sayonara, sycophant? Another one replied, "Unless the toxic twosome return to the royal family and stir up the drama we would expect, the Sussex gravy chain is over for Scooby Doofus." A third one said, "It absolutely does. Jumpy claps here." A fourth one wrote, "Gosh, I was really surprised to read it was only released February 10th. It seems like that came out and died months ago." Another one added, "I haven't seen a single person on Book talk about it, and these days that's how you get a bestseller, it seems." A sixth one said, "I listened to several bookish podcasts and I only heard it mentioned on one. They didn't read it but mentioned the storyline and seemed indifferent to it, not super excited or over it." According to Taz, royal YouTube sensation, with me now. Tash, the numbers don't lie. Meghan Markle is hated and has been destroyed by the Netflix charts. Now the same thing has happened to her propagandist, you know, the Goebbels to her Hitler, and he deserves it. He deserves it. Because remember, he still wants to destroy the British royal family, and what the world is basically saying, we don't believe you, we don't care about you, we don't want to support you, just go away.
It honestly couldn't happen to a nicer person. He's been deeply unpleasant. And then for him to throw back and to mention Endgame, let's not forget this is the same Omid Scobie that was so cowardly, despite knowing that he deliberately put those names in for one edition to be released, the Dutch edition. And the little coward then lied and tried to blame it on the two female translators that involved the worldwide media knocking on these women's doors and following them. He could have got them sacked, all the while knowing that he was lying, and he did it deliberately. He did it on purpose, and he tried to get those two women in trouble for it, just for doing their job. He's a snake, and he deserves this rather embarrassing. I mean, I don't think I've ever read of anyone's books coming that low. It's so low that you just wouldn't ever speak of it. I think that this is truly delicious. He's a deeply unpleasant character. He is very duplicitous, just the same as Meghan, and he's very, very vindictive. There's so many different things that I've seen him do on social media, even when he deliberately attacked the founder of One Young World. I can't remember her surname, but her name was Kate. And he deliberately got the Sussex squad to pile on this woman because she dared to stand up for the Queen and said that Harry and Meghan, weren't good for publicly hurting her. Omid
Kate Robertson,
is one of the worst people. He's one of the worst people, and he plays victim just like Meghan.
Exactly. It's over. And it's quite interesting because maybe Omid Scobie Tash should have had one of Meghan Markle's hold that thought bookmarks when he thought about writing this book. Hold that thought, okay? Hold that thought. But Tash, what is so shocking to me is that there are still propagandists out there now in the mainstream media for Omid Scobie and Meghan Markle. I mean, GB News on this said Meghan Markle's latest bookmark sells out in less than 24 hours again. I mean, that's Cameron Walker, the royal editor of GB News, who is like the new Omid Scobie. Yeah. He's friends with Omid Scobie. He just does the Sussex's dirty work. But the Royal News Network actually, brought the facts here and said, actually, that's not right. There's plenty of bookmarks left. Meghan just forces anyone who wants it to buy it in an expensive bundle starting at $48 and going all the way up to $147. It's a rather sleazy business practice to move unpopular inventory, Tash. So surely people have to start waking up now when we see that sort of propaganda.
I mean, hold that thought. More likely fell asleep here on the first page when it comes to anything that Omid Scobie writes. Yes. I mean, honestly, to say that this was his first venture into the world of fiction is laughable in itself, really, because Finding Freedom and his second book was
both total fiction.
Fiction, wasn't it? Completely?
It's like he was Meghan Markle's ghostwriter, really. It should have just been like Meghan Markle's fiction.
Exactly that.
And he should have stayed behind the scenes.
They had to lie, didn't they, Dan, to the courts? They were trying to lie to everybody, saying, no, we never gave any information to Omid Scobie, despite him following Meghan round, she gave him access, didn't she, inside the palaces on engagements. He went out to South Africa with them.
Well, he was there for the very last engagement at Buckingham Palace, where Meghan told him, I'll never return to the United Kingdom again.
Yeah, honestly, this is delicious news. It certainly put a smile on my face.
It is. But Tash, look, in much more serious news, the line of succession is very much now up there and being discussed. The whole concept of it, actually. And I've just recorded a debate, which is going to broadcast next week, on this really critical issue, because I do understand that there's a lot of constitutional experts, and Rafe Hadelman-Koo of the New Culture Forum will be with us for that debate. And he advocates for the line of succession not to be tampered with. Hereditary monarchy is incredibly important, and Andrew needs to stay, Beatrice and Eugenie need to stay. And his argument is, look, it doesn't even really matter because they're so far down the line of succession. But see, my argument on this, Tash, is that, no, we do have to do something, because the monarchy would immediately be over if we had King Harry and Queen Meghan anyway. So what is the point in leaving them in the line of succession? I really like William's idea of royal HRH titles and the line of succession being linked to working royals. So you still would obviously have to be a blood royal, but what that would mean in this case is like Princess Anne and Prince Edward would be massively boosted. And I actually think that would really help the popularity of the British royal family. And you've actually agreed with Jenny Bond, who's written on this, Tash, and you've gone public, writing, of course, Andrew should be removed from the line of succession. Personally, I think they should also remove Harry and his children, plus Beatrice, Eugenie, and their children from the line of succession. And Tash, I think this is so interesting because the fact that we're both here and we are royalist and we are monarchists, it just shows you, I think, how quickly this situation is having to develop because we are in these unprecedented times.
Dan Wootton raises a series of claims that deserve closer examination, not because they are sensational, but because of what they imply. In this segment, he argues that the commercial failure of Omid Scobie's latest book is more than a publishing disappointment. He presents it as a public verdict, not simply on one author, but on an entire ecosystem of commentary, alignment, and narrative building around Harry and Meghan. He also moves beyond the book itself, suggesting that wider questions are now opening up around legitimacy, influence, public trust, and even the future boundaries of the monarchy. The purpose here is not to react emotionally, and not to amplify personal hostility. It is to examine what this moment may actually signal about credibility, about strategy, and about the risks of becoming too closely associated with a single cause or faction. The first issue is the meaning Dan assigns to commercial performance. He treats low rankings as a form of moral and political judgment. That is a powerful argument, but it should be handled carefully. Poor sales can indicate many things: weak timing, limited audience appetite, ineffective promotion, genre confusion, or simple market fatigue. But what Dan is really arguing is more specific. He is saying the audience is no longer prepared to reward material that appears derivative, agenda-driven, or overly dependent on palace grievance as its central engine. That is plausible. And if it is true, then the implication is significant. Because once a commentator is seen not as an independent observer but as an extension of a camp, a surrogate voice, or a proxy participant in a feud, credibility becomes fragile. The public may forgive strong views. It is less forgiving when it senses coordination, selective outrage, or recycled narratives presented as revelation. This is why Dan focuses so heavily on the idea of Scobie as a mouthpiece. That language is obviously confrontational, but beneath it is a strategic point. Once a writer becomes associated too closely with one side, every future intervention is judged through that lens. Whether fair or unfair, the question stops being "is this true?" and becomes "who is this serving?" And once that shift happens, the commercial consequences can be severe. There is also a broader point here about fatigue. Dan appears to believe the audience is moving on from a certain kind of royal storytelling, one built on perpetual disclosure, endless grievance, and a promise of insider truth that rarely delivers institutional consequence. In that reading, the failure is not just personal. It reflects exhaustion with a whole genre. If every new release promises to expose the monarchy but instead revisits familiar themes, then each subsequent project carries less force than the last. That matters because media ecosystems often misread attention for loyalty. A figure may dominate headlines for years, yet still fail to convert that attention into trust, purchase, or durable influence. Controversy can keep a name visible, but it does not guarantee public belief.
I said yesterday in my video that once they've lost Jenny Bond, and Jenny Bond has been very much the royal family need to forgive Harry, the royal family need to accept Harry back, the royal family need Harry. She has been very, very supportive of Harry and at times Meghan throughout this seven odd years that this has been ongoing since Megxit. For Jenny Bond to turn around and say, strip the titles, take them out of the line of succession, it just shows how serious that this has got and how many people can see the dangers. I think it is dangerous to have them continue in the line of succession in the way that it is. Yes, it would be a republic. I don't even like saying the words, but if anything were to happen to other members of the royal family where these people did have to be jumped up and you had a risk like Harry and Meghan coming to the throne, of course, there's no way the public would ever accept them taking or coming to the throne. It just wouldn't happen. That would be the end of the royal family. But I think in the cases of Andrew and Fergie, Andrew with talking to Chinese spies, with giving away secrets, with Harry and Meghan taking money off of questionable characters here. They're so desperate for money. They're no different to Andrew and Fergie. They will take money off of anyone. We saw this recently with Harry and Meghan taking that free trip to Jordan on the World Health Organization. And there's so many issues where I believe Harry and Meghan, Andrew and Fergie are very, very similar. You can't have people in the line of succession that can be such diplomatic time bombs. Andrew has proved that everyone was right. He was a diplomatic risk. Harry and Meghan have already shown that they are a diplomatic risk. And it just seems ridiculous that you would have these people in the line of succession. I do understand what Ralph is saying, though. This is the way it's always been done. But unfortunately, you can't keep it going like that. Not with the risks I think, and how upset that the public are. If you lose the public support, you lose the monarchy.
And especially, Tash, given Harry's behaviour and Meghan's behaviour becomes more dangerous and more deranged. And one thing that we have both picked up on and are really disgusted by is the fact that the mainstream media have just ignored this completely disgraceful interview with Channel 4 News. I mean, in some ways, I guess you could argue it shows how Harry's stocks have fallen, like the fact that he does give this interview, parrots Hammer's talking points, and it's not even an issue. But I think it's because they want to protect him. And especially, of course, given that the Israeli administration came out and directly called Harry a liar. I mean, imagine if they had done that to any other member of the British royal family, it would be headline news. So you say on this, Tash, 101 reasons why this fool needs his dukedom taken away. How much more does the royal family need to get the ball rolling on this? He is a diplomatic disaster waiting to happen. And then pointed out, anyone notice that this story hasn't been picked up by the MSM? I haven't seen any major outlet run this story, and it's pretty big news. Israeli minister hits back at Prince Harry. And let's just get into what Sharon Haskell said. She's the Israeli deputy foreign minister. And she said, Prince Harry, with all due respect, before using your global platform to level accusations against Israel, I would suggest a very simple step. Come and see for yourself. I personally invite you to visit the humanitarian corridor and witness firsthand how aid is coordinated and delivered. You are welcome to speak directly with the British general serving at the CMCC Centre, the British representative, who acts as deputy commander alongside the American forces overseeing the movement of humanitarian goods. He will tell you very clearly the corridors are open and thousands of trucks are entering every day. It is deeply disappointing to see influential figures amplify claims without verifying them. With the reach and authority you carry as a member of the British royal family, words matters, facts matter even more. Frankly, repeating demonstrably false narratives raises serious questions. And one might say, and remember this is an Israeli government official saying this, that if your trousers were on fire, you might not even notice. That is how detached these claims are from reality. The invitation stands. Come, see, speak to those on the ground, then judge. I mean, wow. And Tash, just before I get your reaction, in case people missed it, it is just worth taking a little look at this interview, because I don't think he was all there during this interview. Actually, he was shifty and uncomfortable and moving around, and he makes a really uncomfortable reference to the royal family being in the news and laughs. Like, the whole thing is really inappropriate. Watch this.
Yesterday, we were with you at a hospital where children are still being brought in who have only recently been injured in Gaza. How important is it that the world continues to pay attention here?
I think it's important for everybody. It's not just for me. It's not just for Dr. Tedros. I think the entire world has spoken up, and there's a lot of stuff in the news. It goes at an incredible pace, and what's been happening in that region has been going on for a long time, and it drops out of the news. So I think it was a really important time for us to collaborate and come here and shine a light and focus on the very real humanitarian catastrophe that has happened and continues.
We were with you this morning at a charity that is getting food into Gaza and is feeding 1 million people a day. But they're saying they're not getting anywhere near enough food. Medical aid isn't getting in. Journalists aren't getting in. Would you like to see an increase in all those things going in? Would you like to see independent journalists being let into Gaza? I think
again the world has spoken many times. So I think yes, everything that I've heard and everything that I've seen, especially from World Central Kitchen, what we heard this morning on the live link, was that the aid corridors need to be opened. They're currently not, and I know Dr. Tedros has already talked extensively about food and medical supplies. The basic needs for full access for humanitarian organisations to be able to deliver that aid to the people that need it the most.
Dr. Tedros, Duke of Sussex, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for covering this.
I mean, Tash, this is a scandal. It is an international scandal. Yet the mainstream media haven't covered it at all.
It's almost as if it's been buried, and then it's like, well, who buried it? Why did they bury it? But Harry, the state of him in that interview, he's rocking back and forth throughout. He keeps pushing up onto his toes. This is not the behavior, I'm sorry, of a well person. For people saying, oh, he just gets anxious. This is a man that grew up giving speeches. He's been, he had speech writers. Harry was, when he was younger, he was able to command rooms, concert halls, rugby matches. This man has got something deeply wrong with him. You just have to look at the state he was in throughout the entire trip in Jordan. He didn't seem like he was on the same planet, really. He was often looking off into the distance. And then you think to yourself, why is he peddling this propaganda? Is this part of the trip? We know that the World Health Organization paid for this entire trip, including the luxury 3,000 a night stay for the humanitarians in Catherine and William's favorite hotel in Jordan. So Harry and Meghan have got a freebie here that's been paid for them by the World Health Organization. But was part of this, they have to parrot what they have been told by the World Health Organization. It's obvious that I think that is what is part and parcel. You scratch our back, we'll give you free stuff. And that is where there is a massive, genuine concern, and it is valid. These guys will take money off of anyone. We know Harry is popping up, giving speeches wherever, whenever that he can. He's even taking lowly sums of money in comparison to what they were originally commanding when they left the royal family. So it's obvious that these two will take money off of people and say what people pay them to say. That is very dangerous.
It's incredibly dangerous, Tash. And the thing is, it cannot be forgotten that these two remain a clear and present threat to the British royal family. I know they have a totally different take. They think the Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor situation clears the way, Tash, for a royal comeback. Whereas I would argue it should make it even more important for them to be firmly and officially cast out, to be put into exile. Charles has to listen to William on this. I really believe that. And the Middle Eastern trip just showed why. This is only going to get worse. It's only going to get more deranged.
No, I'm in complete agreement with you on this. I mean, this should serve as a massive, massive red flag to the royal family. Harry and Meghan are not going to stop. It's clearly obvious that Harry has no intention of making amends with his father. Otherwise, he would have got on a private jet and actually tried to spend time with his dad. I do believe that the king is ignoring his son's calls, but who can blame him? Because when he was given finally a meetup with his family last year, or rather the king, he only got 15 minutes, a quick slot in between Charles's other business meetings that day. And that was it. And Harry obviously revealed every detail to the media. But this is the thing. When people think of Andrew and Fergie and what they got themselves into, it's because they were greedy. They were grifters. They took money off of anybody and everybody that offered it to them. Harry and Meghan are no different. But the difference is Andrew and Fergie were loyal to the Queen because they weren't stupid enough to cut off the hand that feeds them. We know that Harry and Meghan have no loyalty whatsoever to Queen, to King, or to country.
Very well put, Tash. Harry and Meghan, though, are pretty terrified at the moment, specifically in terms of the plans relating to Sarah Ferguson. So we've got a lot of breaking developments on this.
Dan's argument, stripped of its sharper edges, is that visibility has now outlasted persuasion. Then the conversation widens. Dan and his guest shift from publishing to constitutional questions, titles, succession, and the place of non-working royals. This is where the rhetoric becomes more consequential than the sales numbers. Because what is being suggested is that public patience with ambiguity is running out. In other words, if individuals continue to trade on royal status while operating outside royal discipline, then pressure will grow for the institution to clarify what those titles mean, what privileges they carry, and whether they can be separated from duty. That argument is not really about Harry and Meghan alone. It is about institutional risk. If titles are used commercially, politically, or diplomatically without accountability, then the institution appears weak, passive, or complicit. Dan's larger case seems to be that the monarchy cannot indefinitely tolerate that kind of blurred boundary, especially during a period of strain around the king's health, Andrew's legal and reputational burden, and wider scrutiny of how the family protects itself. His comments on Prince Harry's media appearances fit into that same pattern. Again, the language is aggressive, but the underlying concern is clear. When a royal figure intervenes on complex geopolitical questions without formal responsibility, without visible expertise, and without obvious institutional backing, the risk is not merely embarrassment. It is confusion. Confusion over whether he speaks for himself, for a cause, or by implication for a family from which he remains symbolically connected. That is why Dan keeps returning to the same theme, not simply misconduct, but drift. Drift in role, drift in message, drift in consequences. And in institutions built on symbolism, drift can become dangerous very quickly. But there is an irony here too. Dan criticizes deference in media, yet his own argument depends on a form of public correction through exposure, commentary, and reputational consequence. In that sense, his video is not merely celebrating one author's setback. It is asserting that media power can be used in the opposite direction, not to protect a narrative, but to puncture one. Whether one agrees with his tone is almost secondary. The more important question is whether this moment marks a turning point. Has the market decided that palace-adjacent grievance is no longer enough? Has the audience begun distinguishing between scrutiny and advocacy, between reporting and alignment? And is the monarchy, however reluctantly, being pushed toward a harder definition of what royal relevance now means? Those are the real implications beneath the noise. Dan Wootton's commentary may be combative, but it points to something serious, a struggle over legitimacy in which books, interviews, titles, and public silence are all being interpreted as evidence. And in that struggle, perception is no longer a side issue. It is becoming the battleground itself.